This is the Second Studio, hosted by the Architecture and Design Office fame. My name is David Lee, and with me is Marina Bordeaux-Renee. The two of us are architects, partners at the office. We have a phone call coming in. Is it a hotline? That would be exciting. And it's a what?
It's an office line.
Oh, that's even more exciting then. Could answer the call live and show people how we deal with spam callers. And of course, we are hosts of the show, and this week it's the two of us in the studio, and we are going to answer a question that a listener sent in, and perhaps if we have time, a couple others that came up recently. Recently, I was speaking to a class of students, and a couple of the questions they asked I thought were interesting and stood out, so we're going to use those as subject matter for the recording.
Sure.
Yeah. And have you researched your answers? Do you have?
I've read the email, actually, that the person that reached out.
All right. Well, let's see what we have to make up on the spot. Sponsors.
Available with Revit version 2023.1 onward, Autodesk Insight is a next-generation carbon analysis tool that can help you make the leap to low-carbon design. With only a few clicks, Insight lets you analyze, understand, and track the embodied and operational carbon impact of your design choices. You can then visualize opportunities for energy efficiency and carbon mitigation with its flexible dashboards, helping you make more sustainable and informed decisions. Check out the Insight link in our show notes to find out more. This episode of The Second Studio is brought to you by BQE Core, the all-in-one firm management software built for architects. Designed by architects for architects, Core helps you track time effortlessly, manage projects seamlessly, and get paid faster so you can focus on design, not spreadsheets. With powerful automation and real-time insights, it's everything you need to run a smarter, more profitable firm. See how BQE Core can transform your practice by clicking the link in our show notes.
This is the Second Studio with the two of us. Here we go. Let's start with the person who wrote in. I feel like we have more obligation to that person.
Sure, you want me to read it? All right, huge fan of the podcast. It's kept me entertained through a lot of long, busy architecture school days. I am wrapping up my master degrees this year and being sent out into the world. I've just started the process of job hunting for the next year, and it's a little overwhelming. As a young, almost professional, I have a real desire to experience as much as I can at this early stage in my career. I don't really know exactly where I want to end up, but I know I don't want to jump straight into a regular 9-to-5 in the city I currently live in. I want to use this time to see the world, and I'm at a point now where I could essentially do anything. A new city or even a new country are very enticing options. I'm sure you guys get questions like this all the time, but what advice would you give to a young architect in my position? It's a big decision, and there is a lot of complexity to it regarding cultural differences, language barrier, understanding the firms you could be employed at, future projects. Would I want to stay there or come back? What you could learn from the new place? Yeah, I'm not really sure what my question is. I guess it's simply, where do I go from here? And how do I make the most of this period of my life without setting myself back? For reference, I live in South Africa. Well, I live in South Africa.
Oh, that's pretty vague. Yeah, that's a big place.
And the qualifications there are recognized in North America and many Asian countries. Would love to hear your thoughts on this. Kind regards.
All right. Yeah. What's your answer?
It is overwhelming, and I do roughly remember what that was like. It is a weird thing because you feel so relieved after you're graduating from school. You're like, hey man, I made it through like 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, whatever, program you've done. You're like, that's it. I am done with school. Super big moment, right? In like somebody's life. And now you're kind of like a naked bird trying to take your first flight, and you have no idea how the fuck you're gonna fly, how you do use your wings, which direction you're supposed to go, which way is the wind blowing, what's up and down. Like you have no idea. So it is very exciting, and I think it's a great mindset to have, to be open to not stay local after graduation. And I'm probably biased to that option because that's what I did. But I think it's great to think like everything is on the table. You're free, right? And you can take any opportunity that comes to you, as close or far as it is. Minded that you still have to figure out how to make that happen. But I think it's a great mindset because it really opens up your opportunities and possibly the direction that your life can be taking. I think it's very sad to me in general when people just stay where they went to school. Because I'm like, no, it is. Because I'm like, well, if you went to school in New York, then maybe it's not that bad. Yeah. But if you went to school in like a tiny town that's cute and you know everyone, okay, cool. But like, come on, like your adult life is now starting, right? So please, like, dream a little for yourself. You can always come back to that place. You know it. And there's nothing. It's your option D. It's your plan D. You come back to that place, but you have plan A, B, and C you can explore before coming back to that. So I think it's good to think that you can come back to the place you were in because you know it. I don't think that should be your end goal.
Yeah.
And even if you're gone for 6 months and you come back, that's fine. But at least go somewhere for 6 months. Try something. Learn. Meet people. Like do something. Challenge yourself a little bit. Especially in our profession, because there is so much to learn, there is so much to discover, there's so many people you can meet that I feel like you would be missing out on an easy opportunity. So that's that. Anything you want to add on that?
Not really. I mean, it's interesting because I feel like it's become more accepted and common to think that you can always reinvent yourself regardless of your age. Right. And your career can pivot. You can try new things, explore new things, do new things, take on new adventures, even if you're 40, 50, 60, 60 is getting up there, but 35, 40, 50, like around there, you can still pivot. And the world is always open regardless of your age. And I think to a degree that's true. And I think the mentality is a very potentially healthy one. Unless you're like a serial reinventor. Yeah. Because I have come across people where like they are constantly doing something new, right? They're constantly reinventing themselves. They constantly have a new business, a new thing, and it's going to be the greatest success in their lives and the greatest success the city has ever seen. And you realize that it's almost like they're a serial, not an entrepreneur, but a serial failure, which sounds sad. But like, and it's sort of like so on that note, if you don't allow yourself enough, I don't know what it is, commitment, seriousness, honesty about what you're doing, you can fall into that mode of just constantly not seeing something through, fumbling, failing, and then starting something else and making all these kind of broken promises to oneself. But that aside, the idea of always having the freedom to do something new or different, regardless of age, is more prevalent. But the truth is, because of the way the human body works, that's not really the case, especially if you are a female and you are thinking of having kids and a family. And this is not really directly the part of the question or the answer, but like that does matter, right? Because when you I feel like when you're, in your early 20s, you have that sensation that you're describing, and you don't really, at least I didn't really consciously think that would ever change. Right. Like I was aware vaguely that, as you get older, things become more kind of crystallized in your life and whatever else. And maybe you or people in general would want to settle down and whatever else. But when you're that young, it's not a real thing to you. It's like an abstract thing.
It's far in the future.
It's far in the future. And you do also, in a place like New York City or we were, it's like, well, but everyone's always inventing themselves in New York. We have 55-year-olds who act like they're 30-year-olds in a positive way. So like that conservativeness that's not going to happen. That's not a really concern. But then when you do get older, it's like, oh yeah, it is actually a lot harder to just pivot and do something crazy, or like move to a different place and be there for 2 months and then be there for 6 months and be somewhere else for a year and pivot when you get older. It's just more difficult because the stakes become a lot greater. Your responsibilities become greater depending on what your, family situation is. Let's say, I'm kind of bringing it down, but let's say you now have kids, and that's a serious commitment now, or your parents are older and they need, looking after. There's like a lot of other things that happen in life, or you realize that the cost of living in the United States and healthcare and everything else. And you're like, okay, well, in order for me to have a security blanket of just health and safety, I need to make X amount of money. I can't do that if I'm constantly jumping around between countries, in theory. So as much as I do like the idea that one can always reinvent themselves, it is true that it tapers.
I think also, if you're single.
Yeah, being single makes all the difference in the world.
It makes everything easier, especially if you're trying to move to a different country.
Yeah.
If you're two people, while you have two people, you have to figure out their legal situation to be in the same place at the same time.
Yeah.
So it becomes a lot more complicated. So if you are single, you just graduated, then just go explore the world, man.
It's kind of a weird thing because it feels like the inability to be as free just is baked into the way things work.
Yeah, and I think
you almost can't avoid it.
And I think related to like the age thing, it's almost like when you're young and you do that, you kind of explore and go places, you're taking a chance on yourself. When you're past a certain age or like life situation, you're kind of taking a risk on yourself. There is kind of like that threshold, like at the beginning you have nothing to lose, you have everything to gain and to learn. But once you get to a certain point in your life, it becomes more of I might lose some of those things.
And other people. You become responsible for other people.
Yeah.
Like I said, relationships, kids, parents, grandparents, whatever else.
I mean, so it's really cool that, their qualifications are recognized in North America and Asian countries. I would say in terms of cultural differences between these two, let's say, countries, if you speak English and you come to the States, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Like the cultural difference is not as much as if you go to somewhere in Asia where the language is different, culturally it's very different. And I still think that's a phenomenal experience. And if you're young, you will figure out the language. You will learn on the spot. It might take you a few months, but if you put yourself in a situation where you're forced to figure it out, that's when you're going to learn and figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
If you wait to like master the language to move to the country, like that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
That's never going to happen. You just have to like jump head first in order for it to really make sense.
And you do have the benefit of time between the age of 20 and 30. Like you can kind of do almost anything you want in that time period. It doesn't, and it's more acceptable. And
I think also it serves you. Let's say if you were to decide between North America or Asia, I would say go to Asia first. You're younger, you can take more risks, you're more of a sponge to learning and trying stuff out, and you don't know anything anyway, so just go to the place that's more out of your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And then I think that will also be more beneficial for, let's say, your resume, to come back to try and go to North America and get a job and be like, I've lived in Japan, in Taiwan, and worked in China, and now I'm like here. Like it just makes you a little bit more special because the type of people at your age who will enter for the same position will have the standard background. So this also makes you a little bit more different from them, maybe a bit more desirable, and you will probably have learned things that they didn't. So you will have more things to bring to the table.
Well, I think it's also a question of, where do you want to end up in the future? So
and what
I find interesting and challenging with these types of questions and conversations is that like there's no, like my problem solving brain, sometimes it doesn't quite apply because you don't know what the problem is because you don't know what the outcome that you're searching for is. So you can't really work backward from it in a certain sense, because if you were to work backward from it, you would say, okay, well, I want to end up in this place doing X job, making X amount or whatever things, but that's undetermined.
Yeah.
So that's where it becomes weird. I'd also say the opposite is true with your last remarks, where if you practice in the United States and have certain experience here, and you go to a different country, generally speaking, American experience counts for a lot in other countries. That might change 10 years from now with the way things are. But like now, that's like, it's very, very worthwhile. I think even 10 years is going to be worthwhile. We hear time and time and again that other countries are interested in the American expertise in X, Y, and Z thing.
Well, let's just say that immigration in the U.S. right now is not really like a hot topic.
Well, so. It might change in quite a few years from now. But historically speaking, in recent times, it's American whatever is very desirable. It is. Intriguing.
I'm just saying for people outside of the U.S. to try and come here and work and live. Oh, it's not really the best climate at the moment. So.
Oh well, yeah. There's all that for sure. But so going back to the idea of if you knew where you wanted to end up, then you'd probably go to that place second, I would imagine. The other thing too is, And maybe this is the other side of the conversation. He asked, how do I make the most of this period of my life without setting myself back? So I want to talk about that last part of setting oneself back, because I think it's an interesting question. So, and I've thought about this a lot over the years. Again, that really depends on what your end goal is, what you end up doing. So a specific example is if you know somehow that you want to have your own practice in the future and be an architect, and you have your own business doing architecture, and you also know not just the country, but like the city or the state or the whatever place you want to be in, the sooner you can end up there and the sooner you start your own business, in some ways, the better, right? And this bleeds into another question which came up, which I'll pose now from one of the students, which is basically, is it when should one person start their own practice, and should you do it sooner or later? Like how soon after college should you do it? Do you do it right out of the gate, after 2 years of experience, after 10 years of experience, after 5 years of experience? Like, what do you do? And it depends on the person, because I've seen plenty of architects start their own practice too soon with not a lot of experience. So let's say a couple years of experience, something like that, 2 to 4 years of experience. And they get huge success in the first year of starting the practice. And then, because I've been in offices like this, and then quickly they plateau. They'll plateau in terms of leads. They plateau in terms of design excellence, for sure. They really, really plateau in terms of technical knowledge, business acumen, all that stuff that you would learn over time. They're stunted because the 2 or 3 or 1 persons at the top that lead the office, they don't know those things. And the way any organization works, it kind of starts at the top and it trickles down. So when you have a person at the top who's stunted, it's just hard to get past that. And so they spike up with huge success and they just flatline. And if anything, they go down over a period of time because they never bothered to gain. They didn't gain the experience that I was describing. The opposite is also true, where I've seen individuals start a practice with very little of experience, and then after 5 years of having their own business, they are quite successful because they have 5 years of having their own business, as opposed to if you took that person and you compare them to another who waited, 5 years and then started. Now in that scenario, you have one person who, they both been practicing for 7 years, but one person has 5 years of their own practice, their own business experience, and the other person has 0, right? Now that person who has 0 is starting at a deficit because they have 5 years of business experience to catch up in. And so I've seen it both ways, is my point.
But the people who have 7 years of experience and just started, in 5 years, they'll be in the same spot as the other one eventually.
Eventually, yes, but not at that point in time. So it depends on the individual, their personality, and the work they're doing. But what I'm saying is they start off at 0, and the other person started off is now at 5 because they've had 5 years of having their own practice, and the other person is at 0. Having your own practice is a completely different ballgame from working as an architect at an office. Yeah. It's like not even close to being the same thing. There's books and thousands of hours of podcasting done by everybody in the world about what it means to have a small business. And anyone who has a business will tell you you're first and foremost a business owner. Then second to that, you are ex-professional. So it's a completely different territory. So when you compare those two people that I mentioned, both 7 years of experience, but one is at 0 years of experience of business, they have a lot of catching up to do, and it takes time to get there. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so eventually it'll even out, but it does take, I think, a lot of time. So anyway, my point is I've seen it both ways, and it depends on the person, because some people, I think they need to have more experience at other offices before they can do their own thing, because they are the type of individual where they need to learn through that way. Other people, though, are quite capable of learning all the things I described, including design and advancing their design skills on their own. They don't need to be mentored by someone in an office to elevate their design skills, elevate their skills in terms of understanding engineering materials, all the architecture stuff, not like business stuff. They could do that on their own, right? Because when we talk about gaining, in this example, 5 years of experience at an office, mostly what I'm thinking about is the trade experience, not the business experience of like contracts and healthcare stuff like that. I'm talking about the trade experience. And yeah, there are some people they will gain and learn all that stuff just as well, if not more, completely on their own, because they have that way of working, they have that way of questioning things, they have that way of about them of going out and finding questions and information proactively, versus others are not quite that, and they need the structure of an office and a mentor and mentorships to learn those things. So I think it depends on the person. The other thing that comes into the fold too is like, what kind of work are we doing when we start that hypothetical practice? I would say that if you are doing large scale work like museums and towers and whatever else, then it makes, generally speaking, a lot more sense to work at 1, maybe 2 offices for 7 to 10 years of time, doing that type of work, building up those skills I mentioned, but also building up all the business connections, client connections, consultant connections, instructional engineering, engineer connections, all those things, and then transitioning to do your own practice, because it's a smooth transition.
Assuming you're staying in the same locality.
And you want to stay in the same locality, absolutely. If you're doing smaller work, like houses, for example, I think there's a very good argument to be made that you do not need to work at an office that does houses for 7 to 10 years before starting to do houses. It's much easier for many reasons, including skill set development with oneself, to start a practice earlier and just learn on your own if you're doing a smaller project like that. And in both cases, you want to stay in the same region if you're serious about having your own practice.
Yeah, and I think to the small practice doing residential, there is also like a time factor, right? Like the longer you've been around the block, the more people you know, the more small projects you've done, the more referrals you might have, the more familiar you are with the permitting process and all that, like local resources and all that stuff. So it's a time factor more than if you're working on like bigger types of projects, for example.
It's time. I mean, I guess it's kind of like.
It's also easier to learn on these projects, like especially in California, on the
fly,
like on the fly in the field.
Yeah,
you can't really do that for like complex, like giant projects.
Oh, you need a whole team.
You need to understand like how the hierarchy works. You need to understand how the design and construction process works. You need to understand what's at stake. You can't just wing it. A house, like you can kind of wing it if you've done a few. Like eventually, you learn pretty quickly.
I mean, the scale of residential work can also be really small. Like if you are fresh out of college, you're probably willing to take on like a bathroom remodel or do a funky little tiny ADU or small addition, and embedded within that is a fair amount of the same problems that happen with a full house. Maybe not all of them, but there's enough there to work on.
Well, you start with that, and then you do an addition, and you do you just grow from there.
Yeah, but if you're doing large scale work, it's like you kind of need to know the ropes. So that's why I'm saying, like, I think if this hypothetical future you are doing big work, it generally makes more sense to be at an office or a couple offices for like a long period of time, like really understand all of it. Also because those projects take forever. They take like 5 years.
I think going back to the question of like how to make sure you're not setting yourself back, to me it would be to make sure that you keep an open mind in the first few years of your career, like 2-3 years of your career. And anything you want to try, like go for it. And I think you wouldn't be setting yourself back if you do that. I think you will set yourself back if you limit yourself at the very beginning. At some point, you probably will have to think about what you want to do, because that's when you're going to be setting yourself back. If you keep jumping around, not deciding, that might impact, your long-term choices. Yeah. But I would say the first 2-3 years, just go have at it. Like anything you want to try, anywhere you want to go, just go and do it.
It reminds me, some universities and colleges, they require you to declare your major from at the very beginning. So like the first day of school, you are enrolled as an architecture, student. what's the word I'm looking for? An architecture. I'm tired. I didn't get a lot of sleep. An architecture student, major, or whatever major. In other universities and colleges, though, you don't. You're undeclared for the first 2 years. And I think
you could be anything.
You could be anything. So, and then during those 2 years, what's supposed to happen is that as a student, you go and you take your GEs, your general ed courses, but you also experiment and take a bunch of different stuff. Some students end up just fucking around for 2 years, but the idea is you sample. And I think the first few years out of college is sort of the same thing, but within the broad spectrum of architecture, sample a bunch of stuff and see. I think I agree. You can't possibly know for sure what you like and don't like unless you try. You can't possibly know that this tiny town is the perfect ideal town for you unless you tried other things.
And honestly, even if you knew or had a sense of what you might be into, I would still recommend to explore and keep an open mind because you don't really know until you do it. And maybe the thing you thought you would always be doing, let's say, I always knew I would be designing museums, and then you work on one, you're like, you know what, this is really not for me. Well, then maybe you should have explored other things to see if something else was for you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, we're in the middle of that right now. It's like a baby learning to walk. You're going to tumble, you're going to use your hands, you're going to use your feet, you're going to use it the wrong way, and then eventually you're going to know exactly how you're supposed to walk, but you don't know how to walk unless you're trying to figure it out and you're practicing and trying a bunch of different movements.
Yeah, and to be honest,
the same thing.
I think that when you have no professional experience and you just have academic experience, you don't really know what you want to do professionally, because you might enjoy designing. First of all, you might enjoy the conceptual design of X, Y, and Z structures, but the actual designing of them is a very different thing.
Yeah.
And the actual practicing as an architect for those different buildings is also, thirdly, a completely different thing. So,
and
you really
the
don't
mix
know.
that offices do also things differently.
Yeah.
So, you could actually end up discovering something incredible that's meant for you by working randomly in an office that you were not even considering before. So, it's interesting because a lot of students oftentimes have, they're like, oh, I want to work for one of the big names, right? Mm-hmm. And then they make it there and they want to get out.
Yeah.
So it's like,
because those places don't, I
think that's how you're kind of setting yourself back a little bit, is by maybe being too specific too early without, again, giving yourself a chance to try.
True. Although, but you're not saying that you should not work at places that have a big name, are you?
No. I mean, try everything.
Yeah.
Try a big place, try a small place. Again, it depends on personality, but observe how they're doing things. Does it work for you or does it not? Compare it with the previous place you were working at. And that's kind of how you learn, that's how you learn. And that's also how you discover what's for you and what's not for you.
So I have this kind of conundrum in my mind, which is there's a difference between, so what was the question here? Setting myself back. So there's also two ways to define this idea of setting oneself back. Are we talking about personal development as a human being and as a designer, both together as a personal development, or are we talking about career development?
I think he's talking about career.
Well, right, but they're very different things, because I think it's true, and it's easy to argue and state that for the personal development, you should do all the sampling and stuff and go where your heart wants you to go and try stuff and this and that. Go study, like I did, a certain thing for a master's just because you like it, not because it's going to get you somewhere in your career. That's personal development. And in an ideal world, all that experiences you gain for personal development, again, as a human and as a designer, bleeds directly into and integrates with your career development, and they both synergize with each other. That doesn't always happen, though, and I think that needs to be said and understood. They're not. I would actually say probably, I don't know, at least 50% of the time, 80% of the time, they don't really directly relate to each other in architecture.
Well, they inform who you are, therefore how you design and who you are as an architect.
On a personal level, but career-wise, and the opportunities you get are not necessarily going to come because of that.
No.
So that's what I'm saying. So what are some examples of this? Okay, an easy example. So I have a master's in urban design, and when students find out this, they often ask, what led you to pursue that degree, and did it help you afterwards? Actually, that was another question that one of the students asked. And my answer has always been I pursued it because I was interested in it, period. I did not once ever think about, oh, I could use this to then do this thing and be a planner. I could use this because it's going to help me teach. I could use this. It's going to help me work at a big office where I do campus plans. I'm going to use, I truly never thought about how it was going to be used. All I knew is that I was very interested in this subject, and I was very interested specifically in Michael Sorkin. He was super cool and wanted me to go to school. So fuck yes, I'm going to that school. Absolutely. That was it. Did I gain a lot from that experience? Oh my God, tremendously. I would not be the same person and I wouldn't have the same way of thinking if I had not gone through that school with my classmates, with him, with the seminar professors, some of the smartest people I've ever met, blah, 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 blah. Did that translate to having any tangible impact on my professional career in a significant way? Probably not. Probably not.
Yeah, and I'm the opposite example where I did not go to grad school.
Right?
I did not go to grad school. I was looking to get into it, but paying like 6-figure for like 3 semesters was just not an option. When I found out that even if I was interested and wanted to do it, that would not get me anything in terms of career-wise.
Yep.
Therefore, why would I be spending that much money in something that wouldn't bring me that? And I ended up working at offices that people who went to grad school worked out, and I didn't have those on my resume. So
this is my point. So real quick with the urban design thing, because I know some listeners are probably wondering, having a master's full stop is a prerequisite for teaching, at least in the United States and probably in other Western countries as well. You need to have a master's. You don't teach without having a master's. So that is a practical, career advantage gain from getting a master's. That's urban design or architecture or whatever. The urban design degree was also helpful because when it came to teaching, I had a little bit different flavor to me. Right? A lot of people don't have a master's in urban design. A lot of architects have a master's in architecture. I had a master's in urban design and a bachelor of architecture, so I was on paper like quite intriguing to any school who had any interest in urban design. Right? That helped. I think my urban design degree also made me a little more appealing for spam. Offices I applied to when they were doing big scale work, not because they thought I was going to be an urban planner, but because there's like, okay, well, this person has that kind of mind and the sensibility and that interest that we are interested, even if we do buildings, because all of our buildings are thought of as tiny portions that contribute to the urban fabric, which is the correct way to think about a building to begin with. So those helps me, but like, did it make me get licensed faster? Did it allow me to get more money as a salary? Did it allow me to advance faster in the offices and whatever else? Like, no, not really. Do I use my urban design degree now in any practical way? No. Did it inform, again, me as an individual and the work I do tremendously? Yes. But again, it's not a one-to-one relationship between those two things. And this is exactly parallel to the idea of spending more. So this example has to do with school, spending time in school. But it's the same thing as if you were to spend time as a few years bouncing around, trying different offices, different countries, gaining personal experience. Does that translate directly to elevating your career gains because you've done those things? I would say probably not. Not as much as if you stayed in one city, stayed at one office, doing one type of project. That is much more tangible. That's money in the bank that you can easily transition and spend and use to do your own work of that same type in that same city. That's tangible. That like means something. That's like actual experience that matters into the world of everyone else, clients and colleagues and consultants and all that stuff, right? So for me, that's the conundrum.
Yeah, I think it also depends where you're looking to work. Like in New York, maybe that makes sense. If you work in like a tiny city of Illinois, maybe you're more... Yeah, a tiny city in Illinois.
Oh, okay, in Illinois.
I know, Illinois is a state. Thank you very much. like if you've been working there for 7 years, I'm not sure it's going to really bring something to you. If you sound more exotic on paper and you've seen the world, maybe you'll be more intriguing to people and therefore have more chances to, have a higher position in an office, for example.
Maybe. I mean, look, it's not black and white. It's not either or, but I do see that there is a distinction somewhere. There's
a
line
depends
drawn
what you've
somewhere.
done, like if you've traveled the world but you've done nothing but like, knitted sweatshirt with like coconut fibers from whatever, like, okay, that's cool. If you've worked on like a skyscraper that was made with bamboo or like something really cool, then maybe that will, get a bit more attention. I think it also depends of what can you use from those experiences to your career, to position yourself for your career.
Yeah, I agree with that. But let's also make it more realistic. I mean, so, people who have 4 years of experience and they're applying at offices and they apply to an office that specializes in restaurants, okay?
Yeah.
And they do, restaurants come in all different kind of styles, but let's say they do modern restaurants, even like more kind of niche. And that person with 4 years of experience applies to that place because they've always wanted to do restaurants and they've learned that I want to do restaurants and things like that. But their experience of the 4 years is, let's just say for easy, discussion, it's 1 year here, 1 year there. It's a year of experience in different things. It's 1 year of like multifamily housing, 1 year of prefab, 1 year of this, and then maybe half a year of restaurants, right? That person might be more developed and more interesting in a certain way, but on paper, as an employer, as a general employer rather, or is that employer more likely going to hire the person that has all this like random stuff versus the one who's been like, I've worked doing restaurants for 4 years in this town at this other company that and I want to change because they're assholes.
Yeah, but I think it depends what is the position for. If they're looking for someone who's in a design position, I would tend to think that they're more interested with someone who could bring something new to their team rather than someone who's just been, eating the same food like everybody else in that local spot. Like I've worked in a bunch of different offices and each office was doing different stuff. It didn't stop me from getting hired to the next place. I've never done restaurant, but I worked on one in the new office. So I think it depends on your personality, on your skills. Like if you can show people that you can basically design and work on any of those things, that you don't have to have done the 15 libraries in order to be hired in that office that only does libraries, then it's jackpot.
So yeah, it depends on the person that's applying. It depends on the office. It depends on their needs at that moment in time. It also depends on the scale of the projects they're working on. But I'll take it one step further kind of outward. The stuff I'm describing, which is, I'm sort of playing devil's advocate in a way,
I know.
Is even more true when we start to engage the general public and clients, right? So I've set up in this example, the relationship and the question exists between a young architect and an employer architect, and whether or not the employer architect values a diversity of experiences. Mm-hmm. And it depends on things. But let's say now the situation is that young architect has 4 years of experience and now they're going to start their own practice specializing in restaurants. If you remove luck, it's going to be basically impossible to land a client who's going to hire you and have you paid a reasonable amount of money, not doing things for free, to design and be a licensed architect of a restaurant for a restaurant owner.
Well, the whole getting clients when you start an office is like a whole other topic.
But it's not necessarily
even if you have a lot of credentials, like finding the clients is the $1 million question.
Well, but it's not necessarily different, because what I'm saying is that, so in this new example, the end goal is having one's own practice. We don't know. He didn't say that, but that could be an end goal. And so I think, I'm not saying you have to do it one way or the other, but I think for people who are serious about having their own practice and doing a certain type of work or in a region, you should think about, all the things I'm saying, because it does have an impact. You bounce around for 10 years on Extreme in 10 years, and you end up in a new place after 10 years, and you're trying to take on work that you have had experience in past, but in the past, but it's a new place. You're in for a fucking rough ride. You know what I mean? Like that's, so that, again, there's a distinction between personal development and for someone to create amazing architecture versus that translating to practical experience in the eyes of whoever it is that's going to be responsible for your future, which might be an employer or it might be a client. those people don't necessarily see the value of a person with a more diverse skill set as we're describing in the conversation. So there is a difference between these two things. I mean, the perception of and the value, it's a difference in value. It's the true value versus perceived value, right? Developing one's true value does not always align with the perceived value that others assign to you, right? Because people in general, they rely on quantifiable, dumb things like how many years of experience have you had in this place with this building type? Even with like competitions or trying to do project types like libraries. How many times have we heard on the show, or actually even more than that outside of the show, architects who are like, I'd love to do a library, not just out of like greediness, but I feel like I have something I can contribute and do a good library. I'm interested in it. We have the resources, we have the team, we have the expertise. On paper, my office has never done a library, so it's impossible for me to do one because those library, council members or whatever, the clients of those libraries, they want to see proof that you've done 5 before. That's another example of like, the actual value versus perceived value, they don't line up. They don't line up all the time.
But I do still think that, if you're like 22 years old and you graduated from school, you should go explore and do things for 2 or 3 years, and then you can like set your bags down and like pick a lane.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
And I do think that personal development is very important in helping people in their career. If you're a happy, fulfilled, enlightened person because of like your personal experience, you're going to be much more successful at having a good career than if you're a sad, grim, and unhappy person. Like, I think it's it's actually amazing that the latter would make it to the top, because like, oh my god, like who would want to work or hire these people? So
there are a lot of like really
there is, and I'm thinking about it. There was a project manager I worked under years back, and I'm like, this person was like unhappy, grumpy, never smiling. I'm like, how did you make it into this position? You've been around as long as the broom has been in this closet, and that's how you got there. Yeah. Honestly, that's the only way they can make it to that level. So anyway.
No, it's true, and we meet actually a lot of architects who have their own practices, and they're fucking downers. I'm like, dude.
Or they're like asocial, like they're just very awkward. So I do think human personal experience on the side are an asset to developing yourself and potentially to help your career if you do it correctly.
I agree. The other thing I'll say too is that this is also proof, I think what we're both saying is also proof that if you were to start your own practice and you were doing smaller project types that don't require extensive, decades of experience before doing that, that's why there's a good argument maybe that we'll just do it sooner, because like if you're how old are when people graduate? Probably like 22 when they graduate.
Yeah, I was 22.
Yeah, something like that. So let's say you're starting on practice at the age of 25. It's a lot easier to take on small projects, fail, fuck around with your own practice from the age of 25 to like 28 than it is when you're like 40 to 43. You know what I mean? So like there's some kind of matrix or network of information between like location, experience years, project types, and who you are, and all these things, all these factors that kind of somehow spit out a solution, I think, for who a person is. But it's also true because like I definitely know architects where they have their own practice, but they waited quite some time to do that, and it didn't necessarily help them. And I'm sure if you asked them, like, okay, if you could go back and keep everything about your personal life, intact, would you have started your practice like earlier and just like jumped into it instead of like being, an engineer or a contractor or being whatever a thing for a period of time? Would you just start your own practice as an architect sooner and just fail in that arena, And they probably say, well, like, yeah, because even if I fail for the first 3 years, it's still 3 years of experience, personal experience of having a business and experience in the eyes of everyone else in the world and in that region too. You know what I mean? That's 3 years of your name trying to get out there, of existing out there. And that makes a huge, huge difference. So, yeah.
But it sounds like you regretted not having started your business sooner.
I don't know. I mean, I think about this because it's been asked to me a few times now recently. I think I would have been perfectly fine not working, starting my own office. Like, it's really hard to say. Probably 3 years sooner, even 4 years sooner. This is not this is not me thinking highly of myself whatsoever. But I think I'm pretty certain I'm the type of person. I could have started my own practice with only like 2 years of experience, and I would have been fucking fine. Like, I did not need to be under the mentorship in quotes, because a lot of the offices are at were like, okay, mentorship of someone else. I didn't need it. I didn't really learn.
I don't know that I would have been ready 3 years before to start doing stuff on my own.
Well, do you mean ready in terms of personal place that you're in, or ready in terms of skill set? Because they're different things. Like, some people are just
both.
like emotionally
I think in terms of personal, I was probably more ready than in terms of skill set. I don't think 3 years before I had enough. Like, my biggest my professional experience on the biggest project happened in my last 3 years of professional experience.
Right.
And I do think that I had learned a lot of important things during those
Sure.
3 years versus the first 3, where I learned some stuff, but it was nothing that was really valuable for being on projects.
But here's the question, though. That last 3 years, do you think you would have been able to learn those skills on your own anyway if you were put in that same situation, or a similar situation, with your own practice?
Yeah, I would have.
That's what I'm saying.
But the projects I was on, I would not have been able to be on those projects.
True.
And I think also that's kind of like what you notice with offices who started really early, is that I feel like, some of them are very talented, the design looks great and whatever, but it's still not that great.
Yeah.
Like, I do think that you can tell that when there is a difference when someone has been working for a while before starting, and the quality of their work, the detailing, the level of expectation, or even the types of project or budgets that they take on versus not, when they're a little bit older.
I could see that being true. I could see that being
and offices who
true.
started early could also get to that point, but I think it's much harder for them to get to that point on their own, because again, they have to learn it by themselves, versus you learn it from somewhere else where you've seen how it's done.
Well, yes, I think it depends on the individual, because if you're smart about it and you have enough resources, depending on a lot of other factors, you hire and you collaborate with people who bring that expertise.
Yeah.
So, like, instead of being within a school setting, which I'm describing the office as a school setting, and you have those teachers there, and it's a structured setting, and you're learning within that bubble, you're now out on your own, but you create your own miniature school of sorts by seeking out education. And the reason why I think that for myself, I would have been fine doing it that way, because that's what I do on the day-to-day anyway. Any practicing architect will say that there's a lot we don't know. So I'm constantly learning from people anyway.
Yeah, I think it's just hard to, first of all, when you start, being able to hire those other people with that level of experience when, in the first few years, you're not going to make any money for yourself. You can't even hire someone. And then once you to the level where you can hire people, be appealing to those skilled people who could be working in offices that are way better and way more established than yours.
Right.
And can probably offer better benefits and higher pay. So,
but
I think both routes are possible. It just happens differently.
Here's the other thing too with what it means to be an architect, is that honestly, what it means to be an architect is to solve things you've never solved before. And you bring in expertise that, it is a knowledge that builds upon itself over time, of course, to develop expertise. But fundamentally, that's what we do. And actually, despite clients not wanting to hear this because it sounds like too much of a risk, that's why you hire an architect for realsies. You hire them to do something they've never done before. You hire them to solve problems that they've never done before. That's because every project has that. It depends on how much of that is the case with the project, depends on the circumstances. really daring projects, maybe like 80% of it is new, 90% of it is new for the first time. More conservative projects, maybe it flips and only 10% is new. But there's always a lot of critical steps and decisions and moments in a project, in a true architecture project, where there is an unknown thing that someone has to solve. And yes, it has to do with that person's experience, but I think even first and foremost, it has to do with their ability to be this master problem solver, regardless of their experience.
Yeah.
Again, if we're doing an actual project. And so, as compared to like some kind of shitty spec house developer thing. And so, for me, it's like, well, if that's the MO anyway, and that's the standard of practicing anyway, why not just do that from the get-go and have 99% of it be new from day zero when I'm young and I have nothing to lose? You know what I mean? And now a little break for our show sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by Chaos. They make award-winning design and visualization tools, and they're really pushing the boundaries with AI. Now, AI is shaking up the architecture and design world, and Chaos is taking a responsible approach. Their tools are built to help architects, designers, and visualization specialists to work faster and explore more ideas without replacing creativity. Basically, Chaos wants AI to make your imagination stronger, not take over. So you get to design with more freedom, create stunning visuals, and stay in control of your work. If you want to see what that looks like, tap the Chaos link in our show notes.
Say goodbye to design-unfriendly spreadsheets. Programma, built by designers for designers, provides an integrated suite of tools for every phase of your project. From mood boards to advanced specification tools to project management. Seamlessly integrated, easily shareable, and always current, Programma reduces redundancy and minimizes costly errors. Share your work in the format that works for you, be it PDF spec sheets or online branded client dashboards with always up-to-date specification details. Join interior design movers and shakers and start for free by clicking the Programma link in our show notes. Experience the difference with Programma, software built for interior design workflows.
Now, do you think you would have started your office in LA, or like right after school?
Well, so there's also the thing that comes into fold is more like the personal desires of where you want to be and what you're interested in, just to gain experiences from a human level. Mm-hmm. And that's the part that it becomes more real and more strange as the older you get. It's like you realize that you actually don't have a whole lot of time, and these periods in your life, these 5-year chunks, like once that's it. Once they're gone, you don't go backward.
It's weird, right? Because when you're in your early 20s, you're like, oh my God, when I'm gonna be 50, it's
there's
like
no
so
end.
far away.
It's an open-ended.
It's so far away. Time just, I think also time goes slower when you go from like 12 to 22 for some reason,
yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then once you hit, let's say 30, just because it's like one big number, it just goes like that. And you're like, shit,
yeah.
Like I'm gonna be 50 in 10 years. Like what the heck,
It speeds up incredibly fast. Yeah.
And then also you're also thinking, well, when will I stop working?
Right.
Because that also kind of like, and architects is kind of squishy. Like some are working until they die, and some do retire at 65 and, enjoy traveling the world. I don't know very many, but
yeah.
But so if you look at that career lifespan, it's actually pretty short.
It is short. So it's like,
and if you look at how long it takes to build projects, how long it takes to design and build projects, it only means you can have X amount of projects in your career that you would be working on.
Yeah.
Personally, I mean, you could always have like a big office and have your office do a lot of projects, but personally, how many projects can you be heavily involved in?
Yeah, there's not that many.
Not that
really.
many.
In the broadest scope of things. There's not that many. But that's my point also is like, you do have, it's like currency, it's like money. You only have so much money to spend.
You only have so many
much time
lives
to
in
spend.
the video game. Yeah.
And you do need to think about it, which is like the antithesis in terms of mentality of like being free and doing, whatever. But you need to think about these parameters. You don't need to adhere to them. There's no hard rule set. You don't need to like write it down and say, okay, every 3 years, these are my goals, and then adhere to that like so strictly. You could, but I think you should at least think about it, because once those 20 to 25 goes, those 5 years are gone. You don't get to do them again. And again, for most people, the stakes ramp up over time. So you don't get to go back and like just fuck around, let's say, for lack of a better phrase, for a couple of years doing this and that. Once you get to an older age, it's not possible. It's not responsible to do with other people involved. So, so yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I have a coworker, I think I told you, who basically took a whole year off, and he has two young kids, and they're traveling the world for a whole year.
Yeah.
But not like, you know, going to resorts and hotels. No, they're like driving through Africa, you know, sleeping in a tent, like doing like homework in books so the kids, you know, somewhat stay in track. And I'm like, this is so admirable to me because, you know, yeah, sure, I go travel, and I mean, I'm an expat, so I've done my bit, you know, but I'm like, he's in like, you know, probably approaching his 40s. He has a family. He probably owns his apartment. You know, he has a mortgage. He has life insurance. He has to like to pay health insurance too. And the kids are enrolled in school, and they have to stay on track. And like deciding to do that, I'm like, that is admirable that you decided to take the risk. And I'm sure he's gonna make the most of it. No, he is American.
They live in America?
They live in Brooklyn. Yeah. She's from Brooklyn and he's from California.
Do they have like a trust somewhere?
A trust?
A trust fund that they're inheriting eventually? Just finish your story.
I don't know. I mean, they're like you and I, and they just decided to take a year off. And, you know, you can do that. It's not everybody who does that. And there is a lot of like things that need to be figured out in order for that not to set you back, you know, 10 years or whatever, or damage your future.
What I would say with that is the circumstances really dictate how courageous that is and how viable that is. Like, I don't know these people, but let's say, for example, that the couple or one of those, they come from an ultra wealthy family.
No, they don't.
Then you can do that.
Yeah, no, they don't.
Let's say also that they don't have any objective to have their own business together and all eggs in one basket. Then you can do that.
Yeah, no, they don't.
So, you know, then it's different. It's a different thing. I mean, I think this might not be super directly related to like the question and the topic, but here's the reality too, is that when you don't have a safety net underneath you of financial security, which depending on where country you live means also health security, social security, security of like one's rights, all these things, it becomes a lot more difficult to just go out and do these types of things. The risk is extremely high. If you have financial security because you're a wealthy kid, then, which I know is not the case of the people you're talking about, but then, yeah, of course, go do whatever you want. What difference does it make to you? Right?
Well, that's the thing when you come out of school, like you're
wealthy
don't own anything.
by being poor.
You're wealthy because you have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Like you have everything to make. So you don't have a rent to pay yet because you don't have a place to live yet.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have utility bills. You don't have, you know, clothes you have to buy. Like you just, you have what you have in your two hands, and that's kind of it, which again is the most perfect timing to do anything you want to be doing.
Here's the other thing too with the profession of architecture is that it's a very much a local practice for the most part still, right? I mean, it's not like the things that we produce, our digital products can go anywhere, so you can afford to float around. It makes no difference. It makes no material difference on the success of your business. That's not true. Like, you need to be where you practice. That's like in the beginning. Yeah. If you're a giant office and you do work globally, you have, you know, satellite offices everywhere, fine, but that's like not a normal situation. For most of the architecture offices, it's a local thing. You need to be there. You need to live there. And the way the human brain works when it comes to the general public and clients, they want you to be like on their fucking block sometimes, right? That's how people think. That's how the people who are in charge of libraries think. How many libraries have you done in the city of like Toledo or whatever the hell, right? And so that's yeah. I mean, there is, because of what we do. I don't think you can just jump around for. The jumping around definitely does have its downsides.
The thing is, you have to have a purpose for jumping around. You can't just jump around to jump around. You know, like we jumped around in New York, but we jumped around and every time it was like to learn something new, to work on another type of project. There was a motivation behind the jumping around.
Yeah.
And I think that needs to be very deliberate. Otherwise, you will be setting you back.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have to think about why are you jumping around? Mm-hmm. Jumping around is fine if you know why and if you're going toward that goal.
And also provided you're keeping track of roughly how much time you're allotting to do this. The thing that I find frustrating is that, like, I think for myself, and I think a lot of my colleagues, architecture colleagues, we're all interested in different types of projects. Like, if I could somehow live 1,000 lives, I would spend a life just doing libraries. I do another life just doing X thing and Y. I want to do it all. But the way that, again, the perceived value the system is set up and the way time works and how long buildings take, you can't do it all in a short period of time. And it's like, unless you work at a big company that does it all, then you can pivot from one thing to the next within that setting.
But even like big projects, construction design could take 2 years.
That's what I'm saying.
Construction would take 5. You're never going to see. That's the frustration on, working in some of those bigger office and bigger projects, is that you actually don't see what you've been working on come to life. I
know. And even in houses, complex houses, even normal houses now, they take 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. I mean, it's not uncommon for a lot of the projects done by the super high level famous architects. They take 5 years to do. Think about, so so those timelines for those types of houses and the big projects, and you compare that to the timeline of what we're describing of having the freedom for the first 3 years, that doesn't work. Like, somewhere in there, something doesn't align. And so I don't have a solution to this, but the thing that I don't like and I hate is that, like, you have to choose. You don't get to, like, gain all these different experiences fully and end up out at the end of it at a younger age, right, where you have freedom still. If you were to gain full experience of these different types of projects, you're now close to 40.
But if you're not looking to have your own office, then it's less of an issue.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, this conversation is much more toward, like, people wanting to have their own practice than not. If you're not looking to have your own practice, then you can jump around for 5 years and then, pick your spot.
To be honest, if you're not looking to have your own practice or you work at offices, then there's not really much of a question. I mean, like, then do whatever and move jobs when you don't like it, and move jobs to make more money, move jobs to do the projects you want. That's about all you have to worry about.
And that's the only thing that would set you back if you basically just want to be an employee, is staying in a place where it's not for you anymore.
Yeah. I guess so. The cultural question does apply, if you're working at an office still. So, if you gain experience, like we were saying earlier, you gain experience working in Japan, do people in the United States care that you have 3 years of experience in Japan because you don't even understand the imperial system, or, like, whatever?
Well, I think it depends what office you were working in Japan, what projects you worked on in Japan. Again, like, if it's, I don't know, you were doing bathroom remodels in Japan, well, it's, you speak Japanese, okay, that's cool, you're the only person who speaks Japanese in the office. Or if that office is looking to do a project in Japan, then you're going to be a great asset. But otherwise, like, it's hard to have a strategy that fits everybody's situation,
I think, though, if you're working at offices and that's their, what it's going to be for you, it's just so much easier, because even, let's say you gain a specific experience in a country, and then the language is like Japan. You have all of your experiences in Japan, you went to school in Japan, like all that kind of stuff. And now you're trying to work in the United States, which is very different. You still have, like, the entire United States or another country. You still have an entire country worth of architecture offices, whether it be the US, Canada, whatever else, to, like, find an office. And so it's sort of like
I know.
The finding the gig is like a predefined menu for you that's right there. You just need to find the right one. And there's going to be at least a handful of offices that are a good fit.
Well, and I think also the language aspect also multiplies your options.
Yeah.
If you speak more than one language, then you can work in more than one country. So shit goes down in one place, just run to the other.
Well, English is the language you'd want to know, but yeah.
Yeah, but what? So if the United States are burning tomorrow, and then you speak Japanese and go to Japan.
Yeah, I'm just saying, being able to speak Japanese is not as helpful as being able to speak English in terms of options of countries to be in. knowing
no,
Japanese
but if
doesn't.
lifestyle and quality matches your expectation better in that other country that does not speak English, then fuck English and go live in that country.
No, I get that, but if I'm saying if you had to choose a language to know to give you the most options,
Yeah, well,
it would be
obviously
English.
he already knows English, so he could
We
probably
don't know.
benefic-
This could have been a Chat GPT thing.
No, but like, you already know English. Okay, fine, check that box. Now what else can you learn?
At the same time too, one of the things that's been very evident through a lot of the conversations we've had on the podcast is the people who have the most interesting design work, because again, we're kind of design focused, are the folks who have a mixture of backgrounds. They've gained experience in different ways. They didn't just like sit down, plop down in one region, one city from the age of 23 and stayed there their entire lives. Like they went out and did stuff in different places. So I think also,
I mean, it could be construction techniques. It could be like material, be aware of how to use some materials. There's a lot of things that could be learned from those experiences. I think also on the human aspect, it also makes you more resilient.
what do you mean?
Well, if you've left everything you had and you knew for a place you know nothing about, and you managed to survive for like a year or two,
Oh yeah.
and then move to another country or move back, you will be able to figure anything out.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that's true.
And that is a huge survival skill that will beneficiate you, in your career and in your life. So,
I guess another kind of parallel thought is this idea of, as an architect, absorbing and observing and consuming information and a variety and a diversity of art, architecture, understanding how people live, all the world, and then producing something at the other end of it. And producing architecture takes so much time and effort and focus that I think it's very common for that I just described to be out of balance. We spend, as a species of architects, almost too much time producing and not enough time absorbing and learning.
mm-hmm.
And it's not necessarily our fault, because like it requires, that much time to do it. It's like, it just takes time. It's people are always like, why does it take you so long? Because it does. Like, it takes time to be creative. It takes time to do the technical. It takes like an immense amount of time and thinking. And as a result, it's hard to find time or make time to do the other thing. And it's sort of at a bigger scale, that's actually what we're talking about too, is how do you balance and negotiate this issue of time of acquiring versus producing. It's a tricky one.
Well, I think that's when you need more people,
True.
and that's how you win time is by having more people working on the same thing, so everything could be looked at and worked on, in a faster time frame.
Employees is what you're saying. Yeah. I think that's true.
And I mean, that's it. That's the only way as an office you can be profitable and do high quality work. Like, there is no way you could be doing, the 10 projects you need to do a year to pay all of your expenses and like get in the nitty gritty details of each of them really well.
Yeah.
As one person, like, that's just not.
Not if you're doing 10 projects. You could do one a year maybe, but like, who's
Or you
gonna
could
really...
do 10 and they're just not detailed. They're just very basic stuff. So it's...
Yeah, well, fuck those people. I'm tired of those people. Jesus Christ.
like, you can turn around a lot of work, but if it's like generic stuff, like, is that even design?
I hate those people so much. Oh my God. This is a completely side, an anecdote, but like recently I was talking to a potential client. Conversations were going great, met a few times, blah, 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 blah. This individual has cash. They're not like some other folks who we've spoken with of late because of the fires in LA, where like they don't have money because insurance didn't fuck them. This person has cash. And anyway, he came to the part where I'm like, okay, here's like the proposal for what we're gonna do. And he's like, well, because this guy owns like multiple properties. It's like, well, I'm already working with an architect for some of the other properties. I'm like, yeah, I'm aware of that. That's fine. I don't need to do all of the properties. We can just do some of them or one of them, whatever. He's like, well, their fee is less than a quarter of yours. I'm like, all right, dude. Yeah. So I have a policy of kind of vetting clients early on through this part before doing anything. And I didn't in this case because I made the wrongful assumption of like, okay, well, I met him in person. Like, I know who you are. It's very clear who you are. Like, finance is not an issue. You seem to be a person of taste as well. Blah, 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 blah. Still, apparently, none of that means anything in terms of what they expect an architect to cost. And so, it reminded me of that because that's another example of whatever quote architect they're hiring is fucking about by doing probably a tenth of the work. They're probably actually making more money per hour with what they do than what we would have charged. And I'm like, no, but these are the people who do a bunch of projects for a tenth of the, or less than a quarter of the price, but they're doing probably like, an eighth of the work.
And we've seen it so many times. I mean, you remember that couple in Malibu a few years ago that had been living in their garage for a year and a half. And they were trying to build an I don't know how many millions of dollar house based on 15 pages of crappy permit drawings. And it's like, again, people are like, oh, I'm not a drafter. It's not because I'm not licensed, I'm not an architect. Well, no. I mean, if that's what you're providing, you're not an architect. I'm sorry, you're a drafter. That's it.
Yeah. And there's a ton of these people out there, and the uninformed and uneducated, they don't know any difference. And I mean, I don't disparage people for not having the knowledge, but I do hold it against them when they choose to be willfully ignorant. When they know that there's other professionals, ourselves, contractors, and other architects saying like, this is not an actual person, and they choose to still believe whatever they want to believe. And, in that regard also, then fuck you. Then I don't want to work with you. If that's how you think about stuff in general. I'm not going to work with you for 3 years if that's your mentality. You have all this evidence to support the opposite, but you choose not to because of why? Because you're a child? Then I'm not going to work with you for the next 3 years. So there, I feel vindicated. No, but it is a problem, right? And this is not really related to this topic, but like that is the problem. Like we have all these people out there screwing around.
Well, it is a problem if you are starting your office and you are like this guy who charges a quarter of an architect's fee on project. You should clearly explain your clients what you're not providing and what you are providing, because it is very detrimental to the profession. It's not cool for the clients because a lot of them, they don't understand that they're going to have a ton of shit to figure out in the middle of construction because you won't be there to support them. And sure, you can turn around a bunch of those projects a year and make a good living and not have to worry about any of the headaches that any good architect would worry about. But you shouldn't be sleeping well at night if you do that.
No, and you're producing garbage work. It's not possible for that type of quote architect to produce good design. I don't care how talented they are, because you're not, for that amount of fee, you're not able to see it through.
Yeah.
So even if you have a good concept design, I guarantee you it falls apart by the end. Yeah. For sure the case. In addition to everyone else being super stressed out and the budget being blown and all kinds of like other things. So anyway, yeah, those people are assholes.
Those people are dicks.
Those people are dicks. I'm trying to make sure we didn't gloss over anything with my many tangents. I guess the other thing too, and we can speak about it briefly before we wrap this up, is like, how long should a person stay at an office and getting X experience before moving on to the next office during these first hypothetical 3-ish years of when they're, exploring things?
Well, I don't know. To each their own, I don't know.
Yeah. So what I would say first and foremost is like, you should trust your gut. So if you're at a place, and this is harder to do when it's your first job, but still I think the rule applies. If you're at a place within those first 3 years of experience and you're like, yeah, this is, I'm unhappy here. First of all, that's a big one. And then you're probably unhappy for good reasons. Either, if you're unhappy, it's either because the office is to blame, like they're just wrong, or it's the wrong fit, right? And in either case, you're unhappy, so you should change. And I think it's tough, right? Because when you're at that threshold and you don't have a lot of experience, you don't want to prematurely pull the plug, like I was kind of alluding to earlier. but you also don't want to like overstay your time because it's just wasted time in addition to like more and more unhappiness over the weeks of being there. So, but in general, you know, you have to measure how kind of depressed you are. If you're really unhappy, then I would give it like maybe a month more time at most, like 4 weeks. And then after 4 weeks, it's still nothing's happening. And if you tried in that office to make improvements by being proactive and saying like, look, I'm here, I like the office, but like this is not working with my team or the project or whatever. And they're just like, yeah, well, that's too bad. Then leave. Don't waste your time anymore. Find some other place.
Don't wait because, applying and finding another job can take you a few weeks too.
Oh, yeah, it can take months for sure.
So if you know something's wrong, then speak about it. And if nothing's changing, then you make the change.
Yeah. On the other side of that, I think how much time you stay at an office on the longer side is maybe more dictated. It's dictated by your happiness. But let's say your broader goal is to get different experiences. So your happiness level is not the most critical thing because you don't want to be so happy that you just stay there forever. You want to move and gain different experiences. So I think how long you stay at an office is more dictated by the types of practical experiences you're getting in that office and the project type. So if you're only at an office for like 2 months or 3 months, you know, unless you're doing an art installation, that's not enough time to go through any of the phases of any normal paced project. Like that's like schematic design. And that's it. So you wouldn't have experience design development, construction documents, permitting, or CA. So that's the thing you need to be mindful of. And that's actually the most challenging part, I think, of plotting out your experiences gained when you're working at other offices before doing your big transition to eventually having your own practice, you know, hypothetically, is that you want to gain all of these different experiences across the 5 or 6 phases. And that's the part that's difficult. The most difficult, I feel like.
Yeah, because you basically have to either see the project through or work on enough project at different phases to be exposed to all of that.
Yeah.
And then there is a question of, okay, you're not going to have your own practice. You're going to be an employee forever, and that's fine. You know, most people do that. That's fine. We need these people. How do you decide how long you're going to stay in an office? I think, you know, and we're not in this situation, so I don't really know, but I mean, can you see yourself long-term there? In what role can you see yourself evolving in those offices, right? Like, you know, this office only has a 3-year time period for you, and then you got to bounce because there is no way you're going to get promoted, or you're not interested in the level of promotion you would be getting at in the next level, you know? Yeah. Or are you going to be there 10 years, or are you going to wait until, you know, things fizzle out and you see kind of like played by ear?
It's so complex. I'm reminded there needs to be like an architect life coach for people. Maybe that's what we could do in our spare time. And between the hours of 2 to 4 a.m. when fire alarms go off and we're awake forever because of that, which happened last night. That's why I look even more tired than usual, if you get my drift. What I was going to say is that it's this interesting conversation because this is exactly the things that we would talk about, you and I, very, very heavily back when we were working, you know, in New York City at offices. Yeah. Every time I would move an office or something else would take place, there's like this very, very complex calculation and problem-solving exercise of trying to figure out, should I or shouldn't I do X, Y, or Z things? And it's dependent on 10 variables. You know, there's like all the stuff we've talked about and then some. And it's just is really difficult. I think also maybe I would caution people to not allow themselves to be overwhelmed or paralyzed by the complexity of all the things that we're talking about. Yeah, I think it's good to think about them, talk about them out loud with people. That also helps. But don't let it like stress you out all the time and constantly be worrying about it like every week. You just need to like live within brackets perhaps, but you need to like live and have like loose brackets that are there. I think, you know, the other thing that comes into the fold is...
And I think also recognize if you are happy in a place and you're happy with what you're doing, then it's good, you know. And
were you ever happy at a place?
That's a different question. I mean, I had days where I was happy.
Oh, such bullshit. That's the day when you had the Nutella cookie.
Yeah, right. I would say long periods of time when I was happy. Well, I mean, it's hard too because projects really make that happen or not. You know, like you have a good day on a project, you have a bad day, something happening, like, oh, someone in your team is annoying, you know, because you're working in team projects. Like, Teams is my nemesis. You know, like, I mean, I probably had days and weeks where I was really like excited and happy. If that was like a long lasting thing, not really. It was more like an up and down, you know.
Oh God.
No, but not like really down, but more like, yeah, there's like better, you know, more exciting days than
let me
others.
rephrase it. Was there ever a place that you worked at where you were like, I could actually,
See
when you
myself
thought to
there
yourself, I
forever?
could be here for, maybe not forever, but like I could be here long term and I would be content?
No.
Pourquoi?
Because I would have done things differently.
Yeah.
Or because
See,
the
that's-
place, you know, like the place was too big. And I was like, I don't think I had my place there for it,
Right.
you know. Or I didn't feel like I wanted to go through all the steps it takes to get to that level in that place because I think it's bullshit.
Yeah.
So,
See, I feel like these are all,
so that's that.
like, what do you call it? Textbook markers of someone who's not designed.
Or
to
a place I
work.
really love, but I was like, I don't think I will be happy with the work in the long term if I
Right.
stay there. I don't
Right.
think I will feel excited about the work that I do there.
See, I have this, and this is this sounds. I don't know. It took me a long time, honestly, to realize that not everybody should have their own practice, because I'm that type of person, and so it's really difficult for me to understand someone who doesn't want to who doesn't see all the stuff you saw and want to like fix it. Like the design quality is maybe not there. The people are I'm not saying that this all happened in one office, but you know, these things happen over time. Design quality is not there. The people I'm working with are an assholes, or this week they're an asshole or whatever. The design, the office organization is not there. The pay is like all these things. I'm like, well, if I see these problems, I can't ignore them. And if I think I can propose a solution, which is doing my own thing, then I don't understand why I wouldn't do that. It took me a long time to realize that not everybody, I don't know.
And you know,
sees it that
honestly,
way.
there is some days I'm like, what have I done? It was much easier to be an employee than trying to fix all these problems, you know.
Yeah, but could you go back?
No, I think I would go back if that was my only option.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it is.
It is always an
it's a
option,
safety
but
net
it's my
thing.
plan Z.
Yeah.
I would try A through Y before I do that.
Yeah.
I would even try a different path before I do that, maybe. So
I had there's one place I worked at. I don't know. There's a few. There's a few that I really enjoyed. Really enjoyed. There's only one though where that was the closest out of all the places I worked at to being an office where I considered. I knew what I was there. I was like, I'm seeing light at the end of the tunnel. I could see a future and a path forward where I stay here. Maybe not forever, but like for a long period of time, like 10 plus years.
mm-hmm.
The thing is, so I was always I was decent at keeping track of all the things we mentioned throughout my career when I was working in offices, all the stuff we've mentioned, including on top of it, you know, where is this office going in the future? You know, as an outsider, even though I worked at that, as an outsider, like what is going to happen in this office the next 2, 4, 5, 10 years? And do I see that going well? And what space is there for me in it? And that's the part where in this office, I was like, yeah, I don't think there's an alignment in further down the line.
I think there's I think one of the office too, I was like, I don't think I fully believe in the work, you know. I think like the work is nice, but I don't think like that represents what I believe in, or you know.
Yeah.
Or if the work becomes too manufactured by that office, too repetitive.
Yeah.
It just makes you, I don't know, I was just thinking I would just be a technician to operate that machine.
Yeah.
But I'm not authoring the machine. And not that I have an ego about like, I want to be the author or whatever, but I would want to try different stuff. I don't want to have to do like the same railing everywhere on every single project because that's all about railing. Like, you know, like at some point it's like, okay, you can have your shtick, but you have to ask, like, you know, the 100 people who work for you to believe in that shtick. I don't know, like.
Yeah, well, the scale of an office becomes an issue, you know, because at some point you just have miniature, you know, copycats of copycats within the office. Like minions from Gru, like they're just minions, like they're all just versions of each other trying to do, you know, something.
Yeah, that's it. And I think when you've been in an office long enough, you kind of start to notice the patterns on every project. And I think to me that's when kind of like the mask, you know, falls down.
Yeah.
And there is no more magic.
Yeah.
You know. So.
And then there's also the politics of playing the game, like you said, which is
such bullshit. You have to be part of that club. Oh, you have to be part of this club. Oh, what are you doing for the office? Oh, let's do office presentations. Oh, let's talk about like this and that. And it's like, let's not pretend we're all friends here and like we're all trying to get our cookie badge today. Like, come on. Like,
well, I think
first of all, that's not what I signed up with architecture. I don't want to be part of freaking clubs. I'm not part of any clubs on my own personal time. Why would I want to be part of clubs in my work? Like, let me design the bathroom I'm working on, and that's it. And then I go home. Maybe go get a beer. That's it.
Well, I think it depends on the scale of the office.
I mean, I understand they have to do that to create like,
you have to.
office culture, keep people interested, involved, also notice like who's participating, who's not, who's going to get promoted next. But I'm like, this is all the bullshit I am not interested in.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The last thing I'll say too is that in addition to the office stuff, in addition to the project types and whether or not you want to have your own practice, and what I also mentioned, there is also the role you have as a practicing architect in an office or on your own. Are you the business development person / marketing person, you know, hunting down leads? Are you the technical person? Are you the project manager that's keeping track of everything? Or are you the designer? And classically, those are like the 5 different roles, or 4, whatever I said. And most people fall into one of those categories. You have a few that overlap between 1 and 2, but honestly, it's kind of like, you know, one of those lanes. And I think that's another thing simply to kind of keep in the back of your mind in terms of getting different experiences and finding your own true eventual path that you're going to be happy with in the long term, is knowing where do I fit within, you know, those lanes. Again, you don't have to choose, but I think they are pretty distinct for the most part, and being aware of it is helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's
it.
That's it. Give us an outro.
Thanks everybody for listening or watching this episode. If you like what we do, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere you can find us. We're also on social media. Facebook and Instagram are the 2 under Second Studio Pod. We also have the website secondstudiopod.com where you can find all of the episodes and more in this series. We have the hotline. You can call or text or call and leave a message or send a text message, 213-222-6950. If you have any questions, any comments, I'm still waiting for jokes. Nobody's sending me
no. Someone sent a joke.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, like months ago. I have to find it.
Okay, we'll have to read it next time. And stay tuned. There is still a lot more coming out this year.
I wasn't paying attention. Did you say
I said everything.
You said everything? Okay, perfect. Thanks, everyone. Talk soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.